Stop arguing, defending, and explaining yourself. Let your actions speak. Have you ever spent hours trying to explain yourself to someone who had already made up their mind about you? Have you ever found yourself replaying conversations in your head, wishing you had found better words, stronger arguments, or clearer explanations? Many people spend a large portion of their lives trying to convince others that they are good enough, intelligent enough, hardworking enough, honest enough, or worthy enough. They explain their decisions. They defend their choices. They justify their actions. They seek understanding from people who may never be interested in understanding them. But what if the problem isn't that you're bad at explaining? What if the real problem is that you're explaining yourself to the wrong people? Welcome to Truth 001. Today, we're going to explore a powerful principle that has transformed leaders, entrepreneurs, thinkers, and successful individuals throughout history. Stop arguing. Stop defending. Stop over-explaining. Let your actions speak. This doesn't mean becoming rude. It doesn't mean refusing communication. It doesn't mean becoming cold or detached. It means understanding that there comes a point where words lose their power and only results remain. Think about it. When a tree bears fruit, it doesn't announce its value. It doesn't argue with anyone. It doesn't defend its existence. The fruit speaks for itself. Likewise, the strongest people are often not the loudest. They don't spend all their energy convincing others of their worth. They spend their energy becoming valuable. There is a common trap many people fall into. When criticized, they immediately defend themselves. When misunderstood, they rush to explain. When doubted, they argue endlessly. When judged unfairly, they desperately seek validation. At first glance, this seems reasonable. After all, who doesn't want to be understood? Who doesn't want fairness? Who doesn't want people to know the truth? But life teaches a difficult lesson. Not everyone who asks for an explanation is seeking understanding. Some people are seeking control. Some are seeking entertainment. Some are seeking conflict. And some have already decided what they believe before you even begin speaking. Trying to convince such people is like pouring water into a bucket with a hole in the bottom. No matter how much effort you invest, the result remains the same. This is where emotional maturity begins. Emotional maturity is recognizing that your value does not decrease because someone refuses to see it. Your truth does not become false because someone disagrees with it. Your achievements do not disappear because someone chooses to ignore them. The world often teaches us that we must constantly prove ourselves. Prove you're smart. Prove you're successful. Prove you're right. Prove you're worthy. Prove you're capable. But truly confident people understand something different. They know that excessive explaining often reveals insecurity. When people are deeply secure in who they are, they don't feel the need to win every argument. They don't feel compelled to correct every misconception. They don't chase every critic. They don't fight every battle. Instead, they focus on building their skills, building their character, building their future, building a life so meaningful that eventually the results become impossible to ignore. Imagine two individuals. The first spends every day arguing online, responding to criticism, defending every decision, and seeking approval. The second spends that same time learning, improving, working, and creating. 5 years later, who do you think has made more progress? Who has developed more confidence? Who has built something meaningful? The answer is obvious. Every minute spent trying to convince the wrong people is a minute not spent improving yourself. One of the greatest shifts you can make in life is moving from a mindset of proving to a mindset of becoming. Instead of proving you're successful, become successful. Instead of proving you're disciplined, become disciplined. Instead of proving you're intelligent, become knowledgeable. Instead of proving you're worthy, understand that your worth already exists. Because at the end of the day, people may doubt your words. They may question your intentions. They may challenge your explanations. But they cannot argue with consistent results forever. Results have a language that everyone understands. And that is why today's discussion is not about winning arguments. It's about winning your future. Not by speaking more, but by becoming more. As we continue, We'll uncover why human beings feel such a strong urge to defend themselves, why that instinct often works against us, and how learning the art of strategic silence can become one of the most powerful skills you'll ever develop. So sit back, listen carefully, and prepare to see communication, confidence, and personal power from an entirely new perspective. Welcome to Truth 001. Let's begin. Why people feel the need to explain themselves. Before we can understand why powerful people often avoid unnecessary arguments and explanations, we first need to understand something about human nature. Why do people feel such a strong urge to explain themselves in the first place? Why does criticism hurt? Why do misunderstandings bother us so much? Why do we become uncomfortable when others think negatively about us? The answer lies deep within human psychology. Human beings are social creatures. For thousands of years, survival depended on belonging to a group. Being accepted by the tribe meant protection. Being rejected often meant danger. Our ancestors lived in small communities where reputation was everything. If people trusted you, you survived. If people rejected you, life became much harder. Although the world has changed dramatically, our brains still carry many of these ancient instincts. This is why criticism can feel surprisingly painful. This is why being misunderstood can feel emotionally exhausting. This is why many people become obsessed with correcting every false impression. Deep inside, a part of the human mind still associates social rejection with danger. And because of this, many people spend years trying to manage how others perceive them. Think about how often people explain things they don't actually need to explain. Someone buys a new car. Instead of simply enjoying it, they start explaining why they bought it. Someone changes careers. Instead of embracing the decision, they spend months defending it. Someone starts a business. Instead of focusing on growth, they constantly justify their choice to skeptical relatives and friends. Someone decides to remain single. Someone chooses a different religion. Someone moves to a new city. Someone quits a job. Someone starts a YouTube channel. Someone pursues a dream, and suddenly they feel obligated to provide explanations to everyone around them. But here's an important question. Who decided that your life choices require universal approval? Who decided that every decision you make must be understood by everyone? Who decided that your happiness depends on other people's agreement? The truth is that many of us have been conditioned to seek validation. From childhood, we're rewarded when people approve of us. We're praised when others are pleased. We're encouraged when we meet expectations. Over time, many people unconsciously develop a habit of measuring their worth through the opinions of others. And that's where the trap begins. Because the moment your self-worth becomes dependent on external validation, you become vulnerable. You become vulnerable to criticism, vulnerable to rejection, vulnerable to judgment, vulnerable to manipulation. Suddenly, your emotional state is no longer controlled by you. It's controlled by whoever has an opinion about you. And that's a dangerous place to live. Imagine handing a stranger the remote control to your emotions. Every time they approve of you, you're happy. Every time they criticize you, you're miserable. Every time they praise you, you feel valuable. Every time they judge you, you feel worthless. Unfortunately, this is exactly how many people live. Their peace depends on public opinion. Their confidence depends on validation. Their happiness depends on acceptance. And because of that, they spend enormous amounts of energy explaining themselves. But here's a reality that changes everything. No explanation can satisfy someone who is committed to misunderstanding you. Read that again mentally. No explanation can satisfy someone who is committed to misunderstanding you. Some people don't want clarity. They want conflict. Some people don't want truth. They want confirmation of what they already believe. Some people don't want understanding. They want control. This is why you can explain yourself perfectly and still be misunderstood. You can provide evidence and still be doubted. You can tell the truth and still be accused. You can be sincere and still be judged. Because the issue was never your explanation. The issue was the mindset of the listener. Many successful people eventually learn this lesson. They discover that not every criticism deserves a response. Not every accusation deserves a defense. Not every misunderstanding deserves correction. Not every opinion deserves attention. In fact, one of the greatest forms of freedom is realizing that you don't need everyone to understand your journey. You don't need universal approval. You don't need permission to pursue your goals. You don't need validation to know your worth. The people who achieve extraordinary things often reach a point where they stop asking, "How do I make everyone understand me?" and start asking, "How do I stay focused on my mission?" Because focus and explanation are often enemies. Every moment spent defending yourself is a moment not spent building yourself. Every hour spent arguing is an hour not spent improving. Every emotional battle drains energy that could have been invested elsewhere. And life rewards investment, not explanation. Look around at highly successful individuals. Most of them are incredibly selective about where they invest their attention. They understand that attention is a resource. Time is a resource. Energy is a resource. And they refuse to waste those resources on unnecessary battles. This doesn't mean they never communicate. It doesn't mean they never defend important principles. It simply means they choose their battles wisely. They understand that some conversations produce growth. Others only produce exhaustion. One builds your future. The other steals it. And the challenge for each of us is learning the difference. Learning when explanation serves a purpose. And learning when explanation becomes a trap. Because there is a hidden cost to constantly defending yourself. A cost that many people don't recognize until years later. A cost that affects confidence, productivity, emotional stability, and personal growth. The hidden cost of constant defending yourself. There is a silent thief that steals more dreams than failure itself. It doesn't look dangerous. It doesn't arrive wearing a mask. It doesn't announce its presence. In fact, most people willingly invite it into their lives every single day. That thief is wasted emotional energy. And one of the fastest ways to waste emotional energy is by constantly defending yourself. Most people understand the cost of losing money. Most people understand the cost of wasting time. But very few people understand the cost of emotional exhaustion. Yet emotional exhaustion can destroy your progress long before you ever run out of time or money. Think about it. Have you ever had an argument in the morning that stayed in your mind for the rest of the day? You replayed the conversation. You imagined better responses. You thought about what you should have said. You created imaginary debates in your head. Hours passed. Nothing changed. But your energy was gone. Your focus was gone. Your peace was gone. And perhaps most importantly, your productivity was gone. This is the hidden tax of constant self-defense. Every argument demands payment. Every unnecessary explanation costs something. Every attempt to convince people who don't want to be convinced drains a little more of your mental strength. And the problem is that emotional energy is limited. You wake up every day with a certain amount of focus, a certain amount of patience, a certain amount of motivation, a certain amount of emotional strength. The question is simple. Where are you investing it? Some people invested in growth. Others invested in arguments. Some invested in learning. Others invested in proving themselves. Some invested in building businesses, careers, relationships, and skills. Others invested in fighting battles that produce absolutely nothing. The tragedy is that many people don't notice the difference until years have passed. Imagine two individuals. The first person spends 5 years responding to every criticism. Every insult receives a reply. Every negative comment becomes a debate. Every misunderstanding becomes a mission. Every doubter becomes an opponent. They are constantly fighting, constantly explaining, constantly defending, constantly trying to win. Now imagine another person. This individual hears criticism but remains focused. They don't ignore reality. They don't reject useful feedback, but they refuse to become distracted. Instead of fighting every battle, they continue improving. While others argue, they learn. While others complain, they build. While others defend themselves, they develop themselves. 5 years later, the difference becomes impossible to ignore. One person has accumulated frustration. The other has accumulated results. One has become an expert at arguing. The other has become an expert at achieving. And here's the uncomfortable truth. The world rewards achievement more than explanation. Nobody asks a champion how many arguments they won online. Nobody asks a successful entrepreneur how many critics they convinced. Nobody asks a respected leader how many debates they participated in. People remember results. Results become evidence. Results become proof. Results become the answer. This is why highly effective individuals often appear calm in situations where others become defensive. They understand a principle that many people never learn. Not every attack deserves a response. Not every accusation deserves your attention. Not every misunderstanding deserves your energy. Because every response creates an investment. And wise people are careful investors. Imagine your attention as a bank account. Every day, you receive a deposit. The moment you start arguing with everyone, defending every choice, and explaining every decision, withdrawals begin. Small withdrawals at first, then larger ones. Before long, your account is empty. You feel tired, irritated, distracted, unmotivated. Not because life is difficult, but because you've been spending energy on things that don't matter. One of the most powerful habits you can develop is learning to ask yourself a simple question. Will this matter a year from now? Someone leaves a negative comment. Will this matter a year from now? Someone misunderstands your intentions. Will this matter a year from now? Someone doubts your ability. Will this matter a year from now? In most cases, the answer is no. And if the answer is no, perhaps it doesn't deserve hours of your attention today. This doesn't mean becoming passive. It doesn't mean accepting abuse. It doesn't mean allowing injustice. It means developing discernment, the ability to distinguish between battles worth fighting and battles worth abandoning. Because not every challenge is an opportunity. Some challenges are distractions disguised as opportunities. And distractions are dangerous. The enemy of greatness is not always failure. Sometimes the enemy is distraction. A person distracted by constant conflict cannot focus on growth. A person obsessed with proving themselves cannot focus on improving themselves. A person addicted to defending their reputation often neglects building their character. And character will always outlast reputation. Reputation is what people think you are. Character is what you actually are. Reputation can change overnight. Character is built over years. Reputation depends on public opinion. Character depends on personal discipline. The strongest people understand this difference. That's why they don't panic when misunderstood. They don't collapse when criticized. They don't chase every rumor. They don't fight every critic. They remain focused on becoming. Because they know something most people forget, you cannot control what everyone thinks. But you can control who you become. And when you focus on becoming stronger, wiser, more disciplined, and more capable, something remarkable happens. The need to constantly defend yourself begins to disappear. Because confidence grows, not from convincing others, but from knowing yourself. Real confidence doesn't come from winning arguments. Real confidence comes from self-respect. It comes from competence. It comes from integrity. It comes from knowing that whether people approve of you or not, you remain committed to your purpose. And that leads us to a powerful question. If defending yourself drains energy, what should you do instead? If endless explanations are a trap, what is the alternative? The answer lies in one of the most respected forms of power in human history. A power greater than loud words. A power greater than endless debate. A power that eventually silences critics more effectively than any argument ever could. That power is action. Why actions command more respect than arguments. There is an old saying, talk is cheap. Simple words. Yet few statements capture reality more accurately. The world is full of promises, full of claims, full of declarations. People promise success, promise change, promise discipline, promise commitment, promise greatness. But eventually, every promise faces the same test. Action. Because action is where truth reveals itself. Anyone can talk. Anyone can explain. Anyone can make excuses. Anyone can create stories. But action exposes reality. Action cannot hide. Action cannot pretend. Action tells the truth. Imagine a person who constantly tells everyone they are hardworking. Every conversation includes reminders of how dedicated they are, how focused they are, how ambitious they are. Yet months pass. Years pass. Nothing changes. No growth. No progress. No results. Now imagine another person. They rarely speak about their goals. They don't announce every move. They don't seek attention. They don't demand recognition. They simply work. Quietly. Consistently. Relentlessly. Eventually, their results begin speaking on their behalf. And suddenly, no explanation is necessary. Because evidence has arrived. This is one of life's most powerful principles. Results reduce the need for explanation. The more evidence you create, the less you need to argue. The more progress you make, the less you need validation. The more disciplined you become, the less concerned you are with public opinion. Because your confidence is no longer built on words. It's built on reality. And reality is difficult to challenge.